Jungkook kneels before Jimin without a ring, and his unexpected words reveal a secret that makes Jimin cry with happiness. Jimin, please don't move. Jungkook was already on his knees when the glass shattered behind them. For one suspended second, neither Jungkook nor Jimin breathed. Rain hammered against the enormous windows of the empty apartment, turning the city beyond the glass into a blur of silver lights. A cold draft swept through the broken window, carrying the sharp smell of rain and wet concrete into the room. Jimin stared down at Jungkook. Jungkook's hands were trembling. That frightened Jimin more than the broken glass. Jungkook was usually the person who never showed fear, even when his voice became quiet, even when his jaw tightened, even when he disappeared into silence for hours. There was always something controlled about him. But tonight, Jungkook looked terrified. Jungkook. Don't, Jungkook whispered. Jimin froze. Jungkook lowered his head for a moment, his dark hair falling across his eyes. Please let me finish before you say anything. Jimin's heart began beating faster. He looked at Jungkook's empty hands. There was no ring. No velvet box. Nothing that looked remotely like a proposal. Yet Jungkook was kneeling directly in front of him, as if the entire world had stopped outside that room. Jimin swallowed. What are you doing? Jungkook finally looked up. His eyes were red. I'm asking you to stay. The words struck Jimin harder than the sound of the breaking glass. Jimin's lips parted. Stay. Jungkook nodded. Not tonight, not for a week, not until everything becomes easier. His voice cracked. I mean stay when things become difficult. Jimin stared at him, unable to understand. Jungkook slowly reached into the pocket of his coat. Jimin instinctively stepped backward. But Jungkook pulled out something that wasn't a ring. It was a small, worn photograph. The edges were bent. The surface was scratched. Jimin recognized it immediately. His breath caught. That. Jungkook held the photograph between his fingers. You remember this? Jimin couldn't answer. He remembered. It had been taken years ago, on a night neither of them had expected to matter. They had been standing outside an old cafe after midnight, sharing one umbrella because Jimin had forgotten his. Jimin had been laughing. Jungkook had been pretending not to look at him. Someone had taken the photograph without them noticing. For years, Jimin thought the picture had disappeared. Apparently it hadn't. I kept it, Jungkook said. Jimin looked at him. Why? Jungkook smiled faintly, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Because it was the first time I realized I was afraid of losing you. The room suddenly felt too quiet. Rain continued striking the windows. Somewhere in the hallway, a broken piece of glass rolled slowly across the floor. Jimin's eyes burned. Jungkook, I know what you're thinking. No, you don't. I do. Jungkook's fingers tightened around the photograph. You think I'm kneeling because I want something from you. Jimin shook his head. I don't know what I think. That's why I'm scared. Jungkook slowly stood. For a moment, he seemed unsteady. Jimin instinctively reached for him. Their fingers touched. Jungkook immediately closed his hand around Jimin's. The warmth of his palm was strangely familiar. Jimin looked down at their joined hands. You're shaking. I know. Why? Jungkook stared at him. Because I've been preparing to tell you the truth for 3 years. Jimin stopped breathing. 3 years. The words opened a door inside his memory. 3 years of unexplained silences. 3 years of Jungkook leaving rooms whenever conversations became too personal. 3 years of messages typed and deleted. 3 years of strange gifts without explanations. 3 years of Jungkook appearing whenever Jimin needed him and disappearing whenever Jimin tried to ask why. Jimin had always believed Jungkook was simply difficult to understand. Maybe he had been wrong. Tell me, Jimin whispered. Jungkook looked toward the broken window. The rain had become heavier. I wanted to tell you tonight because I don't know how much time we have left. Jimin's expression changed. What does that mean? Jungkook didn't answer. Jungkook. Still nothing. Jungkook's look at me. He did. There was something in his eyes that made Jimin's stomach twist. Fear. Not fear of rejection. Something worse. Jimin stepped closer. What happened? Jungkook inhaled slowly. Then he said the sentence that would change everything. I've been protecting you from something you were never supposed to know existed. Jimin's face went pale. The apartment suddenly felt colder. Protecting me from what? Jungkook looked at the photograph one last time before placing it into Jimin's hand. From the reason your mother disappeared. Jimin's fingers went numb. The photograph slipped slightly between them. For years, Jimin had lived with unanswered questions. Why had his mother vanished without saying goodbye? Why had every explanation from the adults around him changed over time? Why did his father refuse to discuss that period of their lives? And why had Jungkook always become strangely quiet whenever Jimin mentioned it? Jimin stared at Jungkook. You knew? Jungkook closed his eyes. Yes. The word was barely audible. Jimin stepped back. You knew? I found out later. How much? Enough. Enough for what? Jungkook's silence was answer enough. Jimin's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't tears of happiness. They were anger. You knew all this time. I was trying to protect you. You don't get to decide what I deserve to know. I know. No, you don't. Jimin's voice echoed through the apartment. Jungkook didn't fight back. He simply stood there and absorbed every word. Jimin turned away. His chest hurt. He pressed his palm against his mouth, trying to control his breathing. Behind him, Jungkook whispered his name. Jimin. Don't. Jimin, please. You lied to me. Yes. The immediate admission stopped him. Jimin slowly turned around. Jungkook was crying now. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Tears simply slipped down his cheeks, as though his body had finally become too exhausted to hide them. I lied, Jungkook said, and I regret it every day. Jimin stared at him. Then why tell me now? Jungkook looked toward the photograph. Because I found something. What? A letter. Jimin's heart stopped. A letter from your mother. The world seemed to tilt. Jimin couldn't speak. Jungkook reached inside his coat again. This time he pulled out a small envelope. It was old. Yellowed. The corners were worn. And on the front, written in handwriting Jimin recognized instantly, was one word. Jimin. His knees nearly gave way. Jungkook caught him before he fell. Easy. Jimin gripped Jungkook's coat. It's my mother. She wrote this before she disappeared. Where did you get it? Jungkook hesitated. That's the part I'm afraid to tell you. Jimin looked into his eyes. What happened? Jungkook's expression hardened. Someone doesn't want you to read it. A strange sound came from outside. Both of them froze. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Coming from the hallway. Jungkook immediately moved in front of Jimin. The protective instinct was so fast that Jimin barely had time to react. Stay behind me. Jungkook. Don't move. The footsteps stopped outside the apartment. Silence. Then 3 knocks sounded against the door. Knock. 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 Jimin's fingers tightened around the old letter. Jungkook stared at the door. His entire expression changed. The fear disappeared. Something colder replaced it. Recognition. Jimin whispered, "You know who that is." Jungkook didn't answer. The handle slowly moved. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand. "Whatever happens next," he whispered, "don't let go of me." Jimin looked at their intertwined fingers. Then he looked at the door. And for the first time that night, Jimin realized that Jungkook hadn't been exaggerating. Someone had been watching them. Someone knew about the letter. And someone was willing to break into the apartment to stop Jimin from discovering the truth. The door opened before Jungkook could reach it, and a man in a soaked black coat stepped into the apartment with rainwater dripping from his sleeves, his face partially hidden beneath a dark cap. Jimin instinctively tightened his grip around Jungkook's hand, but Jungkook moved in front of Jimin, shielding him with his body. "Who are you?" Jungkook demanded. The man said nothing. His eyes moved from Jungkook to Jimin, then to the old envelope trembling between Jimin's fingers. "You shouldn't have brought him here," the stranger finally said. Jimin's stomach tightened. "Who are you talking about?" The stranger looked directly at Jimin. "Your mother." Jimin felt the blood drain from his face. Jungkook's jaw tightened. "Leave. You still think you can protect him?" the stranger asked quietly. "You failed once." Jungkook stepped forward. "I said leave." The man smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "You were warned, Jungkook, and you were told never to come near Jimin." The stranger's expression changed when he heard his name. "So you finally told him?" Jimin looked between them. "You two know each other." Neither answered. "Jungkook," Jimin said, his voice trembling. "Who is he?" Jungkook remained silent for several seconds before finally saying, "His name is Daniel." Daniel removed his cap and shook the rain from his hair. He looked older than Jungkook, perhaps in his late 30s, with a thin scar running from beneath his left ear toward his jaw. "I worked with your mother," Daniel said. Jimin stared at him. "Worked with her doing what?" Daniel's gaze dropped to the envelope. "Something that was never supposed to become your problem." "Then why are you here?" Jimin asked. Daniel looked at Jungkook. "Because he made it my problem." Jungkook's fingers tightened around Jimin's. "Don't listen to him." Daniel laughed quietly. "That's exactly what you told her." Jimin's breath caught. "What did you tell my mother?" Daniel looked at him for a long moment. "I told her to run." The room fell silent. Jimin's heart hammered against his ribs. "Run from whom?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the broken window and looked down at the street. "There are people who make money from secrets, Jimin. Your mother discovered something she wasn't supposed to discover. She thought she could expose them. She was wrong." Jimin's fingers trembled around the envelope. "Did they hurt her?" Daniel slowly turned. "No." Hope flashed across Jimin's face so suddenly that Jungkook almost looked away. "She's alive," Jimin whispered. Daniel's silence became unbearable. "Answer me," Jimin shouted. Daniel lowered his eyes. "I don't know." Jimin's hope collapsed as quickly as it had appeared. He pressed the envelope against his chest. "You said she was alive." "I said they didn't kill her." Jungkook immediately interrupted. "Daniel, he deserves the truth, not like this." There is no good way to tell someone that their entire childhood was built on a lie. Jimin turned toward Jungkook. "Is that true?" Jungkook looked at him. "Parts of it." "How many parts?" Jimin demanded. "My father, my mother, the disappearance, everything." Jungkook couldn't answer. Jimin laughed bitterly, wiping the tears from his cheeks. "You always do that." "Do what?" "You look at me like you're trying to save me from the truth." Jungkook's expression softened. "Because I am." "I don't want to be saved." Jimin stepped closer. "I want to know." Jungkook stared at him and something inside his expression broke. "I know, then stop deciding for me." Jungkook nodded slowly. "Okay." He looked toward Daniel. "Tell him." Daniel reached into his coat and pulled out a second envelope. Jimin stared at it. "There are two. Your mother wrote 2 letters." Daniel placed the second envelope on the table. "One was meant for you, the other was meant for Jungkook." Jimin looked at Jungkook. "For you." Jungkook didn't move. "I never opened it." "Why?" "Because she asked me not to." Jimin frowned. "When did she give it to you?" Jungkook's eyes lowered. "The night she disappeared." The answer hit Jimin like a physical blow. "You saw her?" "Yes." "You spoke to her?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you tell me?" Jungkook's voice became painfully quiet. "Because she made me promise." Jimin stared at him. "What promise?" Jungkook looked at the envelope on the table. "She asked me to protect you until you were ready." Jimin shook his head. "Ready for what?" "For the truth." Jimin reached for the envelope. His fingers hovered over it. For years he had imagined hearing his mother's voice again. He had imagined 1,000 explanations, 1,000 possibilities. None of them had prepared him for this moment. Jungkook stood beside him without touching him. He knew Jimin needed space. That small gesture hurt Jimin more than anything else. Jungkook had always been close enough to catch him when he fell, but now he was deliberately keeping his distance because he was afraid Jimin might push him away. Jimin noticed the tiny habit he had seen countless times before. Whenever Jungkook became nervous, he rubbed the side of his thumb against his index finger. He was doing it now. "You're scared," Jimin whispered. Jungkook looked at him. "Very. Not because of Daniel. No, because of what's inside the letter." Jungkook nodded. Jimin slowly picked up the envelope. What does she say? I don't know. You never opened yours. No. Why? Jungkook gave a faint smile. Because keeping my promise was more important to me than knowing what she wrote. Jimin's eyes filled again. You waited all these years, every day. Why? Jungkook looked directly at him. Because you were worth waiting for. Jimin's lips trembled. For a moment, the anger inside him softened. He remembered all the nights Jungkook had stayed beside him when nightmares woke him. All the mornings Jungkook had left coffee outside his door without saying anything. All the times Jungkook had remembered tiny details Jimin himself had forgotten. The way Jungkook always counted to 5 before answering difficult questions. The way he pretended not to care whenever he was actually terrified. The way his hand always found Jimin's in crowded places without thinking. Jimin suddenly understood that Jungkook's silence had never been empty. It had been carrying something heavy. Jungkook, Jimin whispered. Yes, did you ever regret meeting me? Jungkook's expression changed instantly. Never, not even once, not even for a second. Jimin looked down at the envelope, even knowing what would happen, especially knowing. Daniel quietly turned away, giving them a moment. Jimin opened the envelope. The paper inside smelled faintly of dust and lavender, a scent so familiar that Jimin's chest tightened. His mother's handwriting covered the first page. Jimin could barely see through his tears. He read the first sentence silently, then his lips moved. My dearest Jimin, his voice broke. Jungkook looked away, allowing him privacy. Jimin continued reading. The letter wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was a confession. His mother wrote about a secret organization that had been manipulating people through financial records, blackmail, and stolen identities. She had discovered evidence linking the organization to people close to Jimin's family. She had tried to expose them, but someone inside her own circle betrayed her. She had disappeared because staying would have put Jimin in danger. Every page revealed another piece of a life Jimin had never known. His mother had watched him from a distance. He had attended one of his school performances from the back row. She had once stood outside his apartment building but left without knocking. She had kept every photograph she could obtain. She had wanted to return. She had been afraid. Jimin pressed the letter against his heart and began crying silently. Jungkook finally stepped closer. Jimin turned and collapsed against him. Jungkook caught him instantly. Jimin buried his face against Jungkook's shoulder, gripping the back of his coat. Wanted to come back, Jimin whispered. I know, she didn't abandon me. I know, she loved me. Jungkook wrapped both arms around him. She never stopped. Jimin cried harder. Jungkook held him without saying anything else. Daniel watched them from across the room, his expression heavy with regret. After several minutes, Jimin slowly pulled away. His eyes were swollen, but there was something different in them now. The pain was still there, but so was determination. I want to find her. Jungkook nodded. Then we'll find her. Daniel looked at them. You may not like what you discover. Jimin wiped his tears. I've spent my whole life living with questions. He looked at the old letter. I'm done being afraid of answers. Jungkook reached for his hand. Jimin allowed him to take it. Their fingers intertwined again. This time, Jimin didn't pull away. Outside, the rain began to soften and the city lights slowly emerged through the clouds. For the first time in years, Jimin felt that the darkness surrounding his childhood had finally begun to crack. And beside him stood Jungkook, no longer hiding behind silence, ready to walk with Jimin into whatever truth waited ahead. By dawn, the rain had stopped, but the apartment still smelled of wet concrete and old dust. And Jimin remained awake on the couch with his mother's letter resting across his knees, while Jungkook sat on the floor beside him, quietly sorting through the documents Daniel had brought. Neither of them had slept. Every few minutes, Jimin reread the same paragraph, hoping that the words would somehow change. They never did. His mother had been alive when she wrote the letter. She had been frightened, hunted, and desperately trying to protect him. For years, Jimin had carried the belief that he had been abandoned, but now that belief had become something more complicated. He wasn't angry because his mother had left anymore. He was angry because someone had made leaving necessary. Jungkook noticed Jimin staring at the same sentence for the 5th time. You don't have to read it again, Jungkook said softly. Jimin looked at him. I know. Then why are you? Jimin folded the paper carefully. Because every time I read it, I hear her voice. Jungkook's expression softened. What did she sound like? Jimin smiled faintly through his exhaustion. Warm, she used to hum when she cooked. He paused. I remember almost nothing else. Jungkook leaned his head against the couch. Maybe that's why you always hum when you're nervous. Jimin looked at him in surprise. I do, all the time. You noticed, Jungkook smiled. I notice everything about you. The sentence lingered between them. Jimin looked away, suddenly aware of how close Jungkook was. You shouldn't say things like that after everything that happened. Why? Because I'm already confused. Jungkook's smile disappeared. I'm sorry, don't apologize. Jimin sighed. I'm not saying I don't want to hear it. Jungkook studied his face. Then what are you saying? Jimin looked down at their hands. Their fingers were still touching. I'm saying I need time to understand what you mean. Take all the time you need. Jimin smiled sadly. You always say that, because I mean it. Across the room, Daniel cleared his throat. There is something else you should know. Jimin turned toward him. Daniel placed a folder on the table. Your mother wasn't simply running from people, she was trying to recover something. Jimin opened the folder. Inside were photographs, financial records, handwritten notes, and a map covered with red markings. What is this? A list of locations where evidence was stored. Daniel pointed toward the map. Your mother believed the organization had a central archive. She couldn't find it herself. Jimin's eyes moved across the documents. Did she tell you where it was? Daniel shook his head. No, but she left clues. Jungkook leaned closer. And you never found them? I found one. Daniel pointed toward an old photograph. It showed Jimin's mother standing outside a small coastal house. Jimin stared at the picture. Something about the house felt familiar. He looked closer. I've seen this. Jungkook turned toward him. Where? Jimin closed his eyes. A memory surfaced slowly, fragmented and dusty. He was 6 years old. He was sitting in the back seat of a car. His mother was driving. The sea was visible through the window. She was humming. Jimin remembered a blue door. He remembered seashells. He remembered his mother telling him, if you ever feel lost, remember the house with the blue door. Jimin opened his eyes. The house. Jungkook immediately noticed the change in his expression. What house? She told me about it when I was little. Daniel stood. Where? Jimin pointed to the photograph. There. Daniel's face went pale. That house was supposed to be empty. Maybe it wasn't, Jungkook said. They spent the next hour examining every document. The house was located several hours away in a quiet coastal town where Jimin's mother had once rented a property under a different name. The lease had expired years ago, but the property records showed something strange. Someone had continued paying the taxes. Someone had also been maintaining the electricity. Jimin's heartbeat accelerated. Someone has been keeping it alive. Jungkook nodded, which means someone might still be using it. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Or someone has been waiting. Jimin turned to him. Waiting for what? Daniel didn't answer. Jungkook stood. We're going. Jimin looked up. Now. Yes, you haven't slept. Neither have you. That's not an argument. It's the only one I have. Jimin almost laughed. It was the first genuine laugh he had managed since the previous night. You're impossible. Jungkook smiled. You knew that already. Daniel watched them carefully. If you go there, don't assume you're alone. Jungkook's expression became serious. We won't. The journey began under pale morning sky. Jimin sat beside Jungkook in the car while Daniel followed behind them. The road stretched through green hills and eventually opened toward the sea. The farther they traveled, the quieter Jimin became. Jungkook noticed his hands trembling on his lap. Without saying anything, Jungkook placed his hand over them. Jimin looked down. You do that whenever I'm nervous. Because it works. How do you know? Because you stopped shaking. Jimin looked at him. Slowly, he turned his hand and intertwined their fingers. Jungkook glanced at him, surprised. Don't look so shocked. I'm not. You are. Jungkook smiled. Maybe I'm just happy. Jimin leaned his head against the window. Jungkook, if we find her, he stopped. Jungkook waited. What if she doesn't want to see me? Jungkook's fingers tightened around his. Then I'll sit beside you until you're ready to accept that. And if she does, then I'll sit beside you for that too. Jimin looked at him. You really aren't going anywhere, are you? Jungkook shook his head. Not unless you ask me to. Jimin smiled faintly. I don't think I will. By afternoon, they reached the coastal town. The air smelled of salt and pine. Waves crashed against the rocks below the road and gulls circled above the rooftops. Jimin recognized the place before he saw the house. His heart began pounding. Turn left, he whispered. Jungkook followed his directions. They drove down a narrow road bordered by wild grass until the house appeared between two old trees. The door was blue. Jimin stopped breathing. He stepped out of the car slowly. Everything returned at once. His mother's voice, the smell of soup, the sound of waves, the warmth of a blanket around his shoulders. He walked toward the house as though moving through a dream. Jungkook followed but kept several steps behind. Jimin reached the blue door and touched it. His fingers trembled against the chipped paint. I remember this, he whispered. I remember everything. He pushed the door. It opened. Inside, dust covered the furniture, but the room was strangely intact. There was an old kitchen table, a faded sofa, a bookshelf, and on the wall hung dozens of photographs. Jimin stopped. Every photograph showed him. Jimin as a child, Jimin at school, Jimin sleeping beside his father, Jimin blowing out birthday candles, Jimin graduating, Jimin smiling with friends, Jimin standing on a stage years later. Someone had watched his entire life from a distance, his eyes filled with tears. She was here, he whispered. Jungkook walked beside him. Yes, Jimin touched one photograph. She saw me grow up. She never stopped caring. Jimin's tears fell. Why didn't she come back? Jungkook didn't answer because neither of them knew. Daniel entered the room and immediately noticed something on the desk. Wait, he picked up a small wooden box. It was locked. Jimin recognized the carving on its lid. A tiny moon surrounded by 7 stars. His mother had drawn that symbol on his bedroom wall when he was a child. Jimin reached for it. I know this. Inside the box was a key and another folded note. Jimin opened the note. His mother's handwriting appeared again. This time there were only a few words. My dearest Jimin, if you have found this place, then you are finally old enough to know that love was never the reason I left. Fear was, but fear is not stronger than love forever. Jimin pressed the note against his chest. Jungkook stood beside him. She wanted you to find this. Jimin nodded through tears. She knew I would. Daniel examined the key. This isn't for the house. Jungkook looked at it. Then what is it for? Daniel turned the key over. There was a number engraved into the metal. 7. Jimin stared at it. 7. Daniel nodded. Your mother used numbers instead of names. Jimin looked around the room again. 7 stars. 7 photographs arranged separately from the others. 7 marks on the map. Suddenly, the scattered pieces began fitting together. The key wasn't a message. It was an invitation. Jimin took a slow breath. My mother left a trail. Jungkook looked at him. Then we'll follow it. Jimin smiled through his tears. For the first time, the search no longer felt like chasing a ghost. It felt like walking toward someone who had been walking toward him all along. That evening, as the sun sank into the sea and painted the windows gold, Jimin sat on the porch with Jungkook beside him. The silence between them was peaceful. Jimin rested his head against Jungkook's shoulder. Jungkook didn't move. Thank you, Jimin whispered. For what? For keeping your promise. Jungkook looked at him. I told you, you were worth waiting for. Jimin closed his eyes. I think I'm beginning to understand why you knelt in front of me. Jungkook smiled. Do you? You weren't asking me to marry you. No, you were asking me not to face the truth alone. Jungkook's voice softened. Exactly. Jimin lifted his head and looked into his eyes. Then don't ever kneel in front of me like that again. Jungkook raised an eyebrow. Why? Jimin smiled through the last of his tears. Because next time I might start crying before you even say anything. Jungkook laughed quietly. For a few precious minutes there were no secrets, no threats, and no unanswered questions. There was only the sound of the sea, the fading sunlight, and two people finally choosing to face the future together. The next morning, Jimin woke to the sound of someone moving downstairs, and for one disorienting moment, he forgot where he was until the smell of coffee reached him, and the blue-painted ceiling brought everything back. The coastal house was quiet beneath the grey morning sky, but something about the silence felt different. Jimin sat up, listening. There was a soft clink of porcelain, followed by Jungkook's familiar habit of humming under his breath. Jimin smiled despite himself. He walked downstairs and found Jungkook standing in the kitchen, sleeves rolled to his elbows, staring suspiciously at a frying pan. What are you doing? Jimin asked. Jungkook turned around. Breakfast. Jimin looked at the pan. That doesn't look like breakfast. It was supposed to be eggs. What happened? The eggs fought back. Jimin laughed and Jungkook's expression immediately softened at the sound. There, Jungkook said, that's better. Jimin sat at the table. What? You laughed. Allowed to laugh. I know, I just haven't heard you do it enough lately. Jimin looked at him for a moment. You've been paying attention to me for a very long time, haven't you? Jungkook lowered his eyes. Longer than I should admit. Before Jimin could answer, Daniel entered the kitchen holding the wooden box. His face was serious. We need to talk about the key. Jimin's smile disappeared. What did you find? Daniel placed the key on the table. I spent most of the night examining it. Jungkook pulled out a chair, and the number 7 isn't the important part. Jimin frowned. Then what is? Daniel pointed toward the side of the key. This engraving. Jimin leaned closer. Beneath the number 7 was a tiny symbol almost invisible to the naked eye, a crescent moon crossed by a vertical line. Jimin touched it. I've seen this before. Jungkook looked at him. Where? My mother's necklace. Jimin closed his eyes, trying to remember. She wore it every day. Daniel exchanged a glance with Jungkook. Your mother wasn't wearing it in any of the photographs from the final year before she disappeared. Jimin looked up sharply. What? She stopped wearing it shortly before she vanished. Jungkook opened the folder again because she gave it to someone. Jimin's heartbeat quickened. Who? Daniel shook his head. We don't know. Jimin stood and walked toward the bookshelf. His mother's photographs covered the walls, but now that he knew what to look for, he noticed details he had ignored before. In several photographs, his mother wore the necklace. In later photographs, it was gone. Jimin pulled one picture from the wall. It showed his mother standing beside a man. The man's face had been deliberately scratched out. Who is this? Jimin asked. Daniel came closer. His expression changed immediately. That's impossible. You know him. Daniel stared at the damaged photograph. I thought he was dead. Jungkook stepped forward. Who? Daniel swallowed. Your mother's brother. Jimin went completely still. My uncle. Your mother told everyone she was an only child, Daniel said. That's what she wanted people to believe. Jimin's mind raced. Why would she hide her own brother? Daniel looked at the photograph. Because he wasn't just her brother. Then what was he? Daniel's voice dropped. It's one of the founders of the organization she was trying to expose. The room seemed to lose all warmth. Jimin stared at the photograph. His mother had never mentioned having a brother, not once. What's his name? Daniel hesitated. Elias. Jimin repeated the name quietly. Elias. Jungkook watched him carefully. Jimin, don't let this consume you. Jimin looked at him. It already has. He picked up the photograph. If my mother hid him, there must be a reason. Daniel nodded. And the key may lead to that reason. He turned the key over again. I think I know where it belongs. They left the house before noon. Daniel drove this time, following an old road toward the northern cliffs. Jimin sat in the back beside Jungkook, holding the photograph. He couldn't stop staring at his mother's expression. She looked happy in the picture, too happy, almost as if she hadn't yet discovered what her brother had become. Do you think she loved him? Jimin asked quietly. Jungkook looked at the photograph. Probably. Then how could she fight him? Sometimes loving someone doesn't stop you from knowing they're wrong. Jimin looked out the window. I wonder if she ever hated him. Jungkook shook his head. Maybe she hated what he became. Jimin smiled sadly. You always find a way to make things sound less painful. I'm trying. Why? Because watching you hurt is harder than being hurt myself. Jimin turned toward him. Jungkook. You can't keep doing that. Doing what? Putting my pain above yours. Jungkook was silent. Jimin continued. You have your own scars. Jungkook looked away. Everyone does. You don't have to hide yours from me. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Maybe someday. Why not today? Jungkook looked at him. His eyes held a sadness Jimin had seen before but never understood. Because if I tell you everything, you might look at me differently. Jimin reached for his hand. I already know your worst secret. Jungkook's eyebrows lifted. Which one? You burned breakfast. Jungkook laughed. That's not my worst secret. It should be. Their laughter briefly filled the car. Even Daniel smiled faintly from the driver's seat, but when they reached the cliffs, the atmosphere changed. At the end of the road stood an abandoned stone building surrounded by tall grass. The windows were boarded, the walls were covered with moss. Daniel stopped the car. This is it. Jimin stared at the building. What is this place? An old archive. Jungkook stepped out. How do you know? Because your mother brought me here once. Daniel pointed toward a rusted metal door. She told me there was something beneath this building. Jimin held the key tightly. They entered through the side door. The air smelled of mold, salt, and rust. Their footsteps echoed through the empty corridor. At the end of the hallway was a circular metal door with a small keyhole. Jimin stared at it. The crescent symbol was engraved above the lock. That's it, he whispered. Jungkook stood beside him. Ready, Jimin nodded. He inserted the key. The mechanism clicked. The door opened slowly, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Daniel switched on his flashlight. Stay close. They descended. The temperature dropped with every step. Jimin could hear water dripping somewhere below. Jungkook kept one hand near Jimin's shoulder without touching him, ready to steady him if necessary. At the bottom was a massive underground room. Shelves lined the walls, filled with boxes, files, photographs, and old recording devices. Jimin stopped. This is everything. Daniel nodded. Maybe. Jungkook noticed something on the far wall. Jimin turned. 7 photographs were pinned there. Each photograph showed his mother standing beside someone different. The final photograph showed his mother holding a baby. Jimin stared at it. That's me. Jungkook moved closer. Look at the date. Jimin read it, his eyes widened. This was taken after I was born. Daniel looked confused. That's impossible. Jimin pointed toward the photograph. Look at her necklace. She was wearing it, but beneath the photograph was another picture showing Jimin's mother without the necklace, standing outside the blue house. The dates were only 3 days apart. Daniel's face tightened. There were 2 locations. Jimin understood immediately. She wasn't alone. Jungkook looked around the archive. Someone was helping her. Jimin walked toward a desk. On it sat an old tape recorder. There was a cassette inside with a handwritten label. Jimin recognized the handwriting instantly. His hands began shaking. It's hers. He pressed the play button. Static filled the room. Then a woman's voice emerged from the speaker. Jimin froze. If you're hearing this, Jimin, then I'm sorry. His knees weakened. He grabbed the edge of the desk. His mother's voice continued. I wanted to tell you everything myself. Wanted to hold your face and explain why I disappeared. But if this recording reaches you, it means the person I feared has found you. Jimin's eyes filled with tears. Jungkook moved beside him. His mother's voice became quieter. Jimin, there is something you must understand. Your uncle Elias is not the only person you need to fear. Daniel looked toward the entrance. Turn it off. Jungkook frowned. Why? Daniel's face had gone pale. Because I know what comes next. The recording continued. The person who betrayed me was someone you know. Jimin stared at the machine. Someone I know. His mother's voice whispered the final sentence. And he has been beside you for years. The recording stopped. Silence swallowed the room. Jimin slowly turned toward Jungkook. Jungkook's face was unreadable. Daniel looked between them. Nobody spoke. Then a sound echoed from somewhere above them. A heavy metal door slammed shut. Jimin looked toward the staircase. Did you close that? Daniel shook his head. Jungkook immediately stepped in front of Jimin. No. Another sound followed. Footsteps. Someone was descending the stairs. Slow, deliberate. Jimin gripped Jungkook's arm. Someone followed us. Jungkook looked at him. Stay behind me. No. Jimin shook his head. Not this time. Jungkook stared at him. Jimin tightened his grip around the old photograph. If we're going to find the truth, I'm facing it with you. Jungkook's expression softened. He nodded once. Together, they turned toward the staircase as a shadow appeared beneath the dim light. The stranger stopped halfway down. Jimin could not see his face. Then the stranger spoke. Jimin. Jimin's entire body went cold. He knew that voice. Jimin. The voice came from the darkness again, softer this time, almost painfully familiar, and Jimin felt every muscle in his body tense as he stared toward the staircase. Jungkook immediately moved closer, but Jimin lifted one hand, silently asking him to wait. He knew that voice. He had heard it somewhere before, perhaps in a childhood memory buried beneath years of confusion, perhaps in one of the dreams he could never fully remember after waking. Shadow descended another step, and the dim emergency light finally revealed a man's face. Jimin's breath caught. "Dad," the man stopped. His face had aged dramatically since the last photograph Jimin remembered, but there was no mistaking him. Jimin's father stood halfway down the staircase, one hand gripping the railing, his expression filled with exhaustion and regret. Jungkook immediately turned toward Jimin. "You know him, he's my father," Jimin whispered. His father's eyes moved toward Jungkook. "You brought him here." Jungkook's expression hardened. "He deserves the truth." Jimin's father closed his eyes briefly. "That's what your mother used to say." Jimin stepped forward. "You knew about this place." His father slowly descended the remaining steps. "I knew. You knew about Mom." "Yes, you knew she was alive." His father's silence was devastating. Jimin's voice broke. "All these years, I didn't know where she was. But you knew she didn't abandon me." "Yes." Jimin laughed bitterly. "And you let me believe she did." His father looked down. "I was trying to keep you alive." "Everyone says that." Jimin's voice echoed through the archive. "Everyone says they were protecting me. My mother, Jungkook, Daniel, you, and somehow protecting me always meant lying to me." Jungkook lowered his eyes. Jimin's father looked at him. "You should have told him sooner." Jungkook answered quietly, "I know." "Then why didn't you?" "Because I promised his mother." Jimin's father gave a tired smile. "She always made people promise things." Jimin stepped closer. "Where is she?" His father looked at him for several seconds. "I don't know." "You're lying." "I'm not." "You knew where she went." "I knew where she wanted to go." Jimin's heart raced. "Then tell me." His father looked toward the old tape recorder. "She planned to disappear before Elias could find her. She had evidence that could destroy him and everyone who worked with him." Daniel interrupted. "Including the people inside the government." Jimin's father nodded. "Yes." Jimin stared at the files surrounding him. Suddenly, everything felt larger than he had imagined. His mother's disappearance wasn't simply a family tragedy. It was the consequence of a secret powerful enough to frighten everyone who knew about it. "What did she discover?" Jimin asked. His father hesitated. "A system." "What kind of system?" "People were being watched, manipulated, blackmailed. Identities were created and destroyed. Financial records were altered. People who became inconvenient were made to disappear from public records." Jimin felt a chill travel down his spine. "And Mom found proof." "Yes." "Where is the proof now?" His father looked at the shelves. "Some of it is here." Daniel stepped toward a cabinet. "Then why didn't you destroy it?" "Because your mother told me not to." Jimin stared at him. "You still obey her?" His father gave a sad smile. "Some promises don't disappear when the person who asked for them does." Jimin's anger faltered. For the first time, he saw not the distant father from his childhood, but a man who looked unbearably tired. "Did you love her?" he asked. His father looked at him. "More than anything." Jimin's eyes filled. "Then why did you let her go?" "Because she asked me to." "And you just listened." "She had already been threatened. Elias knew about you. If I tried to stop her, they would have used you against us." Jimin looked down. "So she left to save me?" "Yes." His father stepped closer. "And I stayed behind because someone had to make them believe she was alone." Jimin wiped his face. "How long did you know she was alive?" "For 6 years after she disappeared." Jimin froze. 6 years, then every trace vanished. "You stopped looking?" "Never." Jimin's voice became softer. "Why didn't you tell me?" His father looked directly into his eyes. "Because I was afraid you would go looking for her." Jimin laughed through tears. "And now I am." "I know." His father sighed. "That's why I'm here." Jungkook watched the exchange silently. Jimin noticed his expression. "What?" Jungkook shook his head. "Nothing. Tell me." Jungkook hesitated. "Your father isn't the person your mother was talking about in the recording." Daniel turned sharply. "How can you know that?" "Because he wasn't beside Jimin during those years." Jungkook looked at the old photograph. "She said the person who betrayed her had been beside him for years." Jimin's father's face changed. "Then we need to figure out who she meant." Jimin looked at the shelves. "How?" His father walked toward the central desk and opened a hidden drawer. Inside were 7 small envelopes. Each one had a date written on it. Jimin stared. 7. His father nodded. Mother divided the evidence into 7 pieces. Daniel picked up one envelope. "Why 7? Because she believed no single person should ever possess the entire truth." Jimin carefully opened the first envelope. Inside was a photograph and a handwritten name. Jimin read it aloud. "Marcus Han." Daniel's face immediately tightened. "I know him." "Who is he?" Jimin asked. "A former investigator." His father continued. "He worked with your mother before the organization discovered him." Jimin opened the second envelope. "Lena Park." Daniel nodded. "Another investigator." The third contained a name Jimin recognized. Professor Min. The fourth was someone from the financial world. The fifth belonged to a journalist. The sixth was a doctor. Jimin opened the 7th envelope. His fingers stopped. There was no name, only a photograph. He slowly pulled it out. His face went pale. It showed Jungkook standing beside his mother. Not years ago, not in childhood. The photograph was recent. Jimin stared at it. "Jungkook." Jungkook's face changed. "I have never seen that picture." Jimin turned it over. A date was written on the back, 3 months before the photograph had supposedly been taken. "This can't be right." Jungkook stepped closer. "Jimin, I swear I've never met her during that period." Jimin looked at him. "Then why's your name on the back?" Jungkook took the photograph carefully. Beneath the date were 4 words. Jimin read them aloud. "Trust him, but verify." Daniel stared at Jungkook. Your mother was warning you about him. Jimin's eyes narrowed. Or warning me not to trust him. Jungkook looked hurt. You think I betrayed her? I don't know what to think. Jimin's voice shook. That's the problem. Jungkook stepped backward, then asked me, where were you 3 months before that date? Jungkook closed his eyes, trying to remember. I was traveling. Where? Several cities. Which ones? Jungkook looked at him. I don't remember all of them. Jimin's heart sank. You don't remember? No. Why? Jungkook's face became pale. Because that period is missing. Daniel immediately approached him. What do you mean missing? Jungkook rubbed his forehead. There are weeks I can't account for. Jimin stared at him. You never told me. Because I didn't think it mattered. Everything matters now. Jungkook nodded. I know. His voice became quieter. After an accident years ago, there were parts of my memory that became difficult to access. I thought it was stress. I never imagined. He stopped. Jimin looked at him carefully. You think someone erased something? I don't know. Daniel looked toward the files. Maybe that's exactly what they did. Suddenly, Jimin noticed a small mark in the corner of the photograph. The same crescent symbol appeared there. Look, Jungkook leaned closer. That's the symbol from the key. Jimin's father opened another hidden compartment. Inside was a small black device. Your mother told me this could identify altered photographs. Daniel connected it to an old monitor. After several seconds, the screen flickered. The photograph appeared. Lines of information began scrolling across the display. Jimin watched in silence as the image reconstructed itself. The man's face beside his mother slowly changed. The photograph had been manipulated. Someone had replaced the original face with Jungkook's. Jimin's heart stopped. It wasn't Jungkook. Daniel stared at the screen. No. Jimin looked at the reconstructed image. The man's face became clear. His uncle Elias was standing beside his mother. But that wasn't the only discovery. Behind them stood another person. Jimin's father stepped closer. His expression collapsed. That's impossible. Jimin looked at him. Who is it? His father whispered a name. Daniel. Everyone turned toward Daniel. Daniel's face became completely still. That's not me. Jimin's father pointed at the screen. It is. Daniel shook his head. I wasn't there. Jimin looked between them. Then why does the photograph show you? Daniel's voice became strained. Because someone wanted your mother to believe I betrayed her. Jimin stared at him. Did you? No. Jungkook suddenly stepped forward. Wait, he pointed at the photograph. Look at Daniel's left hand. Everyone looked. Daniel was wearing a ring, a black ring with a tiny crescent engraved on it. Jimin remembered something. I saw that ring. Daniel's face went pale. Where? Jimin looked at his father. On the man who visited our house when I was little. Silence fell over the archive. Jimin's memory returned in fragments. His mother arguing with a stranger, his father shouting, a black ring catching the light, his mother's frightened voice telling him to hide beneath the stairs. Then another memory surfaced. A sentence. Don't trust the man who comes back smiling. Jimin's breathing became unsteady. His mother had been trying to warn him even then. His father stepped toward him. Jimin, what do you remember? Jimin closed his eyes. I remember the ring. He opened them again. And I remember your face. His father looked confused. What do you mean? Jimin stared at him. You weren't the man wearing it. His father shook his head. No. Jimin's eyes moved slowly toward Daniel. Daniel's face had become unreadable. Jimin whispered, but you were there. Daniel stepped backward. Jimin. Jungkook moved closer to Jimin. Don't go near him. Daniel raised both hands. Listen to me. Jimin stared at him. You told me you worked with my mother. I did. You told me you helped her. I did. Then why don't I remember you? Daniel's eyes filled with something resembling grief. Because your mother asked me to make sure you forgot. Jimin's heart dropped. What? Daniel swallowed. I wasn't protecting your mother. He looked at Jimin. I was protecting you. Jimin's voice trembled. From what? Daniel answered quietly. From what you saw that night. Jimin stared at him, unable to breathe. His father looked horrified. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand. This time Jimin held on immediately. Daniel lowered his gaze. You didn't just witness someone threatening your mother. He paused. You witnessed your mother handing something to Elias. Jimin's eyes widened. What did she give him? Daniel looked toward the 7 envelopes. The location of the final archive. Jimin looked at the shelves. This place. Daniel shook his head. No. His voice became almost a whisper. The real archive is somewhere else. Jimin felt Jungkook's fingers tighten around his. Where? Daniel looked directly at him. Inside the place where you spent most of your childhood. Jimin's blood ran cold. His childhood home. The place he had always believed was safe. The place filled with memories of his mother, his father, and the life he thought he understood. Suddenly, every locked room, every unexplained noise, every photograph his father refused to discuss seemed to carry a different meaning. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook's expression was grim. We're going home, Jimin whispered. His father nodded. Yes. Jimin held the old photograph against his chest. And this time nobody is keeping me in the dark. Jungkook squeezed his hand. You won't face it alone. Jimin looked at him. I know. For the first time, the words felt less like a promise and more like something both of them had already decided. The childhood house stood beneath a sky the color of steel, its familiar windows reflecting the late afternoon light as Jimin stepped out of the car and stared at the place that had once represented safety, warmth, and everything he believed about his family. but now every brick seemed to conceal another secret. Jungkook came to stand beside him without saying a word, and Jimin noticed that Jungkook was rubbing his thumb against his index finger again, the nervous habit he always tried to hide. Nervous, Jimin said. Jungkook glanced at him. I'm thinking. You rub your fingers when you're thinking. Jungkook looked down and gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. You noticed. I notice everything about you too. For a moment the tension softened, then Jimin looked back at the house. Let's go inside. His father unlocked the front door. The smell hit Jimin immediately, old wood, dust, and the faint trace of the lavender perfume his mother used to wear. Jimin stopped in the doorway. He hadn't smelled it in years. Jungkook noticed his expression. Are you okay? Jimin nodded slowly. It smells like her. His father looked away. Nobody said anything. They entered. The living room was almost exactly as Jimin remembered it, except for the absence of life. The same fireplace, the same staircase, the same cabinet where his mother had kept family photographs. Jimin walked toward it and pulled open the drawer. Empty, he frowned. Why is this empty? His father answered, because your mother removed everything before she left. Jimin looked at him. Why? She didn't want anything that could be used to track you. Jimin's eyes moved around the room. Then why does it still feel like she just left? His father didn't answer. Jungkook walked toward the fireplace. There's something here. He crouched and ran his fingers along the stone. This doesn't match the others. Jimin joined him. One section of the fireplace was slightly darker. Jungkook pressed against it. Nothing happened. Daniel examined the wall. There may be a mechanism. Jimin remembered something. He walked to the old bookshelf and pulled out a book his mother used to read to him. A children's story about the moon. He opened it. 7 stars were drawn on the first page. Jimin stared. 7 again. He turned the page. There was a handwritten note. The moon remembers what the house forgets. Jimin whispered the sentence. Jungkook looked at the fireplace. Moon. Jimin looked at him. The necklace. He removed the photograph of his mother from his pocket. Around her neck was the crescent pendant. Maybe the symbol isn't just a symbol. His father suddenly spoke. There used to be a painting here. Jimin turned. What painting? Your mother painted the moon above the fireplace. Jimin looked at the empty wall. Why did you remove it? His father hesitated. I didn't. The realization was immediate. Someone else had removed it. Jungkook searched the room. Where is it? Jimin's father shook his head. I don't know. Daniel stepped toward the wall. Then we're looking for something that was hidden behind it. They searched the house for nearly an hour. Finally, Jimin noticed scratches on the wooden floor beneath the old staircase. He knelt and touched them. This was moved. Jungkook joined him. Together they pushed the floorboard. It lifted. Beneath it was a narrow metal compartment. Inside lay a small silver box. Jimin stared at it. Another box. Jungkook opened it carefully. Inside was a cassette, a photograph, and a handwritten note. Jimin recognized the handwriting immediately. He picked up the note. You found this, then you have returned to the place where everything began. His breathing became shallow. He continued reading. Jimin, I need you to understand something before you listen to the recording. Your father didn't betray me. Jungkook didn't betray me. Daniel didn't betray me. Jimin looked at Daniel. Daniel's expression remained tense. Jimin continued. The person who betrayed me is someone you trusted because I taught you to trust him. Jimin's father closed his eyes. No. Jimin looked at him. What? His father shook his head. I thought we had destroyed it. Destroyed what? Jimin asked. His father didn't answer. Jimin inserted the cassette into an old player. Static filled the room, then his mother's voice emerged. Jimin, if you're hearing this, I have failed to protect you from the truth. Jimin's eyes filled instantly. But I want you to know that every lie I told was born from love. Her voice trembled. There is a person in your life who has watched you for years. He knows your routines, your fears, your habits, and your weaknesses. He has earned your trust deliberately. Jimin looked toward Jungkook. Jungkook stared back, confused. He is not your enemy, the recording continued. But he is connected to the person who destroyed our family. Jimin's heart pounded. I cannot tell you his name because if this recording is intercepted, you will be in danger. The voice paused. Instead, remember this. The man who betrayed me always carries a black ring. Jimin slowly turned toward Daniel. Daniel immediately raised his hands. I don't have one. Jimin looked at him. Where is it? Daniel's face hardened. I destroyed it. When? Years ago. Why? Because I realized what it meant. Jimin's father stepped forward. You should have told us. I was trying to protect him. Everyone keeps saying that, Jimin shouted. His mother's recording continued in the background. Jimin, there is one more thing. The archive isn't beneath this house. The archive is inside the walls. Jimin froze. Jungkook looked around. Inside the walls. Jimin's mother continued. Your father knows where the entrance is. Jimin looked at his father. Dad, his father looked defeated. I never wanted you to find it. Where is it? Behind the fireplace. Jungkook immediately returned to the stone wall. He examined the bricks again and found a small crescent-shaped indentation. He pressed it. A deep mechanical sound echoed through the room. The fireplace shifted backward, revealing a narrow passage. Cold air rushed out. Jimin stared into the darkness. How long has this been here? His father answered. Since before you were born. Jimin stepped forward. Jungkook grabbed his wrist. Wait. Jimin looked at him. What? I'll go first. No, Jimin, you promised not to decide for me. Jungkook stared at him, then slowly released his wrist. You're right. Jimin smiled faintly. Thank you. They entered together. The passage was narrow, lined with old photographs and handwritten notes. Jimin recognized faces from his mother's files. Some were crossed out, others had dates beside them. At the end of the corridor was a massive underground chamber. Unlike the coastal archive, this room was still powered. Small lights flickered on as they entered. Computers lined the walls, cabinets filled the shelves, and in the center stood a single desk. On the desk was a photograph of Jimin. Recent, very recent, taken only weeks ago. Jimin stared at it. Someone has been here. Jungkook stepped closer. Yes, there was a laptop open on the desk. The screen displayed dozens of files. Jimin clicked the first one. His own name appeared, then another, and another. His entire life had been documented. His school records, his addresses, his habits, his medical appointments, his friendships, his private conversations. Jimin felt sick. Someone has been watching me my entire life. Jungkook placed a hand on his shoulder. We're going to find out who. Jimin opened another file. It contained information about Jungkook. Jungkook stared at the screen. That's impossible. His name appeared alongside photographs of him from childhood. Jimin looked at him. They were watching you too. Jungkook's expression changed. Maybe that's why I can't remember those missing weeks. Jimin scrolled further. There were files labeled with dates. One date stood out. The same date as the manipulated photograph of Jungkook and Jimin's mother. Jimin opened it. A video began playing. The image was grainy. Jimin's mother appeared on screen. She was sitting at this very desk. Her eyes were tired. She looked directly into the camera. Jimin, if you're watching this with Jungkook, then the plan worked. Jimin stopped breathing. Jungkook stared at the screen. His mother's expression softened. Jungkook, I'm sorry, I know you don't remember what happened. Jungkook's face went pale. What? Her voice continued. But you were there the night I disappeared. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook's breathing became uneven. No, his mother continued. You were the one who helped me escape. Jungkook stared at the screen, tears forming in his eyes. I don't remember. I know, she said. They made sure you wouldn't. Jimin reached for Jungkook's hand. He was shaking violently now. What did they do to you? Jungkook whispered. The recording continued. They took your memories because you knew where I was going. Jimin squeezed Jungkook's hand. His mother's eyes filled with tears. And there is one final truth you must know. The video suddenly distorted. The screen went black. A second later, another window appeared. It displayed a live camera feed of the room they were standing in. Jimin froze. Someone was watching them now. Jungkook looked around. We're not alone. The screen displayed a single sentence. You should never have come home. Jimin's heart raced. Then every light in the underground archive went out. Darkness swallowed the underground archive so completely that Jimin could hear his own heartbeat, fast and uneven, beneath the distant hum of the machines dying one by one. Jungkook, he whispered, I'm here. Jungkook's hand found Jimin's immediately, warm and trembling. Don't let go. I won't. Somewhere in the darkness, Daniel cursed under his breath. Everyone stay still. A faint red emergency light blinked above the doorway, revealing fragments of the room. The shelves, the computers, Jimin's frightened face, and Jungkook standing beside him like a shield. Then a voice came through the hidden speakers. You should have listened to your mother. Jimin froze. The voice was distorted, but there was something disturbingly familiar about its rhythm. Who are you? Jimin demanded. The voice laughed softly. You still don't recognize me. Jungkook stepped forward. Show yourself. You've spent years searching for the wrong person, Jungkook. Jimin looked at him. What does that mean? The speakers crackled. Your mother knew the truth, your father knew the truth, Daniel knew part of the truth, and Jungkook, the voice paused. Jungkook was the only one who forgot it. Jimin tightened his grip around Jungkook's hand. Give him his memories back. You think memories belong to you, the voice replied. You think you can simply open a door and reclaim the past. Jungkook's voice became cold. What did you do to me? Nothing, you didn't survive. Jimin heard Jungkook inhale sharply. He turned toward him. Jungkook, don't listen. I need to know. You don't have to remember everything tonight. Jungkook looked at him. But I need to know why I spent years feeling like something inside me was missing. Jimin stepped closer. Because someone took it from you. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. And you stayed. Of course I stayed. Jimin touched his cheek. Even when you didn't remember why. Jungkook closed his eyes beneath Jimin's hand. For years he had believed the emptiness inside him was simply part of who he was. Now he understood that some of the silence had been imposed upon him. A memory suddenly flashed through his mind. A blue door, rain, Jimin's mother standing beneath an umbrella, a younger Jungkook holding a small metal box. Then another memory, a car speeding along a coastal road, someone shouting. A hand pressing a cloth against his face. Jungkook staggered backward. Jungkook, Jimin caught him. I remember. Daniel turned toward him. What? Jungkook pressed his fingers against his temple. The night she disappeared. His voice shook. I was there. Jimin's heart raced. What happened? Jungkook looked at him. Your mother gave me the key. Jimin stared at him. The same key, Jungkook nodded. She told me to take it somewhere safe, then someone followed us. Daniel's face became pale. Who? Jungkook closed his eyes. Another fragment appeared. A black ring, a man's voice, a familiar laugh, a hand striking the back of his head, then silence. I don't know who attacked me, Jungkook whispered. But I remember the last thing your mother said. What? Jimin asked. Jungkook looked directly at him. She told me, if Jimin ever asks you why I left, tell him I chose him. Jimin's eyes filled immediately. His mother had chosen him, not because she wanted to abandon him, but because she had wanted him to live. Jungkook gently wiped a tear from Jimin's cheek. She loved you, Jimin nodded. I know. The speakers crackled again. How touching. Jimin turned toward the darkness. You wanted me here? Yes. Why? Because the final archive cannot be opened without you. Jimin looked around. What is inside? Everything. Then open it. The voice laughed. You don't understand. The archive doesn't contain evidence alone. It contains a record of every person involved. Jimin's father stepped forward, including Elias. Including Elias. Where is he? Jimin asked. Silence followed. Then the voice answered, closer than you think. A hidden door opened behind the shelves. Light spilled into the archive. A man walked into the room. Jimin stared at him. He was older, his hair silver at the temples, his face calm and almost gentle. Yet Jimin recognized him immediately from the photographs. Elias, his mother's brother, Jimin's uncle, the man he had spent his entire life never knowing existed. Elias looked at Jimin with something almost resembling affection. You've grown. Jimin's body became rigid. You know me. Of course I know you. Elias smiled. I watched you grow. Jimin's stomach turned. You watched me, from a distance. Why? Because you were the only thing your mother truly feared losing. Jimin stepped forward. You destroyed our family. Elias shook his head. Your mother destroyed it herself when she refused to cooperate. You made her disappear. I gave her a choice. Jimin's voice trembled with anger. What choice? Leave you alive or stay and watch everyone around you die? Jimin's father stepped forward. You threatened him. Elias looked at him. I protected him. You call that protection. You all use that word as though it belongs exclusively to you. Elias looked toward Jungkook, even him. Jungkook's expression hardened. Don't talk about me. You were loyal. I don't remember you. You don't need to. Elias smiled. Your mind was kinder to you than reality would have been. Jimin moved closer to Jungkook. You erased his memories. Elias didn't deny it. Yes. Jimin's anger surged. Why? Because Jungkook knew where your mother was going. And where was she going? Elias looked at him for a long moment. Here. Jimin's heart stopped. She was here. She stayed in this house for several weeks before disappearing. Jimin looked around the archive. Then where did she go? Elias pointed toward the wall behind them. Through the second passage. Daniel immediately examined the wall. There is another. Elias smiled. Your mother designed this place with 3 exits. Jimin's father whispered. She knew you would come. She always knew. Jimin turned toward the wall. Show me. Elias nodded toward a hidden panel. Jungkook found the mechanism and pressed it. A section of the wall opened, revealing a small room. Inside was a wooden chair, a desk, and dozens of letters. Jimin walked inside slowly. Every letter carried his name. He picked up the first one. My dearest Jimin. His mother's voice seemed to return with every word. The letters described years of watching from afar, birthdays she couldn't attend, songs she heard him sing through recordings, photographs she kept beneath her pillow. She wrote about Jungkook too. She had trusted Jungkook because he was the one person who never asked her for anything. She had seen the way he cared about Jimin long before Jimin understood his own feelings. One letter contained a sentence that made Jimin stop breathing. If Jungkook ever kneels in front of you, don't be frightened. He isn't asking you to give him your future, he is asking you to let him share it. Jimin covered his mouth. Jungkook stood beside him. What does it say? Jimin handed him the letter. Jungkook read it, his eyes immediately filled with tears. Jimin smiled through his own tears. She knew. Jungkook looked at him. She knew everything. Apparently. Jungkook laughed softly. Your mother was terrifyingly observant. Jimin laughed through his tears. For the first time, the weight inside his chest began to lift. His mother hadn't left a perfect life behind. She had left pieces of herself, hoping one day Jimin would be strong enough to collect them. Elias stood silently in the doorway. She wanted you to have the truth. Jimin turned toward him. And you? Elias looked down. I wanted to make sure the truth never destroyed you. Jimin shook his head. You don't get to call what you did protection. Elias accepted the words without argument. Perhaps not. He reached into his coat and placed a small envelope on the desk. This is the last thing your mother asked me to give you. Jimin stared at it. You had it all this time. Yes. Why give it to me now? Elias looked at Jungkook. Because she told me the moment you found him, I would know you were ready. Jimin opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. His mother stood beside a small house overlooking the ocean. Beside her was another woman. Jimin didn't recognize her. On the back were 6 words. I am closer than you think. Jimin's breath caught. She's alive. Elias nodded. I believe she is. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Then we find her. Jungkook smiled. Together. The investigation that followed took months, but for the first time, Jimin wasn't chasing an impossible memory. He was following evidence. Daniel helped uncover the remaining records. Jimin's father finally told him everything he had hidden. Elias surrendered the information that allowed the organization to be dismantled. And Jungkook slowly recovered fragments of his missing memories, not all at once, but gently without forcing himself to remember what his mind had buried to survive. Some nights, Jimin woke from dreams and found Jungkook sitting beside the window. Instead of asking questions, Jimin would simply sit beside him. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. Their relationship changed quietly, becoming something neither of them needed to name immediately. The promise Jungkook had made that rainy night remained between them, no longer frightening but comforting. Months later, Jimin stood on the porch of the blue house by the sea. The wind moved softly through his hair. Jungkook approached carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You still drink too much sugar," Jimin said. "You still complain too much." Jimin smiled. "Some things never change." Jungkook handed him the cup. "That's good." Jimin looked toward the horizon. "I found another letter today." Jungkook sat beside him. "What did it say?" Jimin smiled. "She said she was proud of me." Jungkook looked at him. "She should be." Jimin rested his head against Jungkook's shoulder. "You know something?" "What?" "When you knelt in front of me that night, I thought my life was falling apart." Jungkook laughed softly. "It kind of was." "Yes." Jimin looked at him. "But you weren't asking me to marry you." "No." "You were asking me to trust you." Jungkook nodded. "Yes." Jimin intertwined their fingers. "I'm glad I did." Jungkook looked down at their hands. "Me too." The sea stretched endlessly before them, shining beneath the afternoon sun. The mysteries of Jimin's childhood had not vanished completely. Some questions remained unanswered. Some wounds would always carry scars. But Jimin no longer felt defined by the things he had lost. He had found his mother's love hidden inside old letters. He had found the truth buried beneath years of silence. And perhaps most unexpectedly, he had discovered that the person who had spent years protecting him had never wanted to control his future. Jungkook had simply wanted to stand beside him while Jimin chose it for himself. Jimin looked at Jungkook and smiled. "Thank you for staying." Jungkook squeezed his hand. "I told you." "What?" "I'm not going anywhere." Jimin leaned closer, resting his forehead against Jungkook's. The wind carried the scent of salt across the porch, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the past finally felt far enough away to breathe. For the first time in years, Jimin wasn't waiting for another secret to emerge. He wasn't afraid of the next door opening. He wasn't searching for a missing piece of himself. He had finally understood that some answers don't arrive to repair the past. They arrive to give you permission to live beyond it. And beside Jimin, Jungkook smiled quietly, holding his hand as the sun disappeared into the sea. Years later, Jimin still remembered the night Jungkook had knelt in front of him. It had begun with shattered glass, rain against the windows, an old photograph, and a secret that had nearly destroyed everything Jimin thought he knew about his family. But now, standing beside the ocean where his mother's final letters had once waited for him, Jimin understood what Jungkook had really been asking that night. Not for a ring. Not for a promise that could be broken. He had been asking Jimin to let him stay. And Jimin had finally realized that sometimes the greatest declaration of love wasn't, "Will you marry me?" It was simply, "You don't have to face this alone." Jungkook walked toward him carrying 2 cups of coffee, exactly as he had done countless mornings before. "You're thinking too much again," Jungkook said. Jimin smiled. "And you're still pretending you can read my mind." "I don't have to." Jimin raised an eyebrow. Jungkook gently took his hand. "I've watched you long enough." Jimin laughed softly. The sound carried across the quiet shore. There were still unanswered questions. There were memories Jungkook might never fully recover, wounds Jimin might never completely forget, and pieces of his mother's story that remained hidden somewhere beyond the horizon. But those mysteries no longer frightened him. Because Jimin had stopped measuring his life by the people who had disappeared. He measured it by the people who stayed. His mother had loved him enough to disappear so he could survive. His father had spent years carrying guilt because he couldn't save the family he loved. Daniel had carried secrets until the truth finally became more important than fear. And Jungkook had remained beside Jimin through every broken piece of the past. Jimin looked down at their intertwined fingers. Jungkook. If you hadn't knelt that night. Jungkook smiled. I probably would have found another way. To make me cry. To make you listen. Jimin laughed. You failed. I did. You made me cry anyway. Jungkook's smile became softer. But they were happy tears. Jimin looked at him. Yes. He leaned closer until their foreheads touched. They were. For a moment neither spoke. The ocean moved beneath the golden evening light, waves rising and falling like a quiet heartbeat. Then Jimin whispered, Stay. Jungkook didn't hesitate. Always. And this time, Jimin believed him without fear. The story of their past had begun with secrets, lies, and a disappearance. But their future would be written differently. Not in hidden letters. Not in locked rooms. Not in forgotten memories. But together, hand in hand, one ordinary day after another. And somewhere beyond the sea, beneath the same sky that had witnessed all their pain, Jimin finally understood the truth his mother had wanted him to discover all along. Love was never the reason she left. Love was the reason she survived. Love was the reason Jungkook stayed. And love, finally, was the reason Jimin no longer needed to be afraid of tomorrow. Jimin smiled. Jungkook squeezed his hand. The sun disappeared beneath the horizon. And neither of them let go. The end.